When monsters want to unwind, they check into Hotel Transylvania. But when the human and monster worlds collide, things can get pretty messy, and sometimes inappropriate for young audiences. Watch until the end to find out which Hotel Transylvania moment had adults completely horrified. Dracula's scary face. In the first Hotel Transylvania, the creators had the colossal task of introducing monsters to a young human audience in a way that wasn't too scary. They mostly pulled this off with one notable misstep. The scene starts out in a very sweet way. Dracula is singing to his daughter, Mavis, while playing the ukulele. Mavis looks up at her dad with big, adoring eyes as Dracula sings his lullaby. He sings the line,
"And if a human tries to harm you,"
and then Dracula goes from being the sweet dad with a loving smile on his face to a terrifying vampire monster with a vicious growl. Then he goes back to being a sweet dad again. Mavis giggled while kids in the audience were crying and shaking. It's hard for kids to understand that Dracula is really a nice dad when he suddenly breaks out in a blood-hungry rage. That growl is terrifying, and his eyes become large, beady, and beastly. Parents complained that young kids had nightmares after that unexpected scene. The pants prank. Of course, there are many adult jokes and innuendos in countless family films that are intended to fly right over kids' heads. But this gag in Hotel Transylvania is downright irresponsible. In the scene, Wayne the werewolf sneaks up on Griffin, the invisible man, and pulls his pants down. For those of you who didn't grow up in this humiliating time in adolescent history, this is called pantsing. It's totally inappropriate. This sets a terrible example for the younger generation. But it's funny because, you can't see invisible people's body parts anyway. That doesn't stop Griffin from defending a certain part of his body. He says he was just in the pool and the water was cold. He shouts, "Don't judge me," before running away in total humiliation. Invisible or not, Griffin has the right to go swimming without fearing he'll be exposed in public. Wayne is not a very good friend. The construction crew. It's long since been determined that some construction workers have an affinity for the passerby. This is often referred to as a catcalling, and it can be super annoying and intimidating. There's a scene where some male zombies are working on a construction site when a female zombie walks by, just minding her own zombie lady business. The zombie dudes on the construction crew oogle her and engage in the tired, played-out catcalling ritual. This behavior, which women have been dealing with for way too long, is totally unacceptable. And from the looks of it, Hotel Transylvania creators wanted to show their audiences that zombie men are no different than your everyday regular Joe. Even zombie ladies have the right to feel safe while walking down the street. It's sending a bad message to boys and girls alike. There's another scene in the film when Johnny discovers that Mavis can turn into a bat and fly. This is an incredible ability, but when Johnny sees her do this, instead of being amazed at her super cool skill, he comments on her body. Instead of appreciating Mavis's talent and mythical powers, he asks,
"You didn't have any clothes on when you were a bat?"
Seriously, dude, she just transformed from a bat to a vampire right before your eyes, and you want to know what she was wearing? But those tasteless jokes based on antiquated views about women and girls aren't only found in the first Hotel Transylvania film. Nope, they can be spotted throughout the entire franchise, and they just keep getting worse and worse.
"Are these monsters gonna kill me?" "Not as long as they think you're a monster."
Huh?
"That's kind of racist." "We'll talk later."
Hotel Transylvania 2. In the second Hotel Transylvania movie, Mavis has a baby.
Sir, only the father is allowed in the delivery room.
Really?
Dracula wants to be part of the whole thing, so he dresses up as a nurse. But his outfit is not like any hard-working, life-saving nurse you'll see in real life. Instead, he perpetuates the horrible stereotype of a curvaceous, big-haired blonde nurse. We get that this costume was supposed to be funny, but the steamy nurse joke is worn out and degrading. And once again, a zombie tries to kiss this nurse without consent. This joke sends the wrong message to kids. Nurses save lives, and their credentials have nothing to do with their chest or hair size. And you should not try to kiss anyone without making sure that they're on the same page. It's creepy and just plain rude. And there's the comment that Vlad makes about Jonathan's wig. He asks what that thing on Jonathan's head is, and comments that it looks like one of his grandmother's body parts. All the kids in the theater laughed at this joke, but it's still pretty inappropriate. Irresponsible grandfather. When a vampire is in charge of caring for a young, half-human child, mistakes are bound to happen. But Dracula's child endangerment shenanigans take it to the next level. Dennis's granddad takes him to his childhood camp to help him learn how to be more vampire-like, like him. He wants Dennis to learn how to fly, so he takes him up this tall, rickety old tower, which is where Dracula learns to flap his wings for the first time. In an act of total lunacy, Dracula throws Dennis off the top of the tower, hoping that he will turn into a bat and fly before hitting the ground. Dennis falls for a long, long time.
He's still not flying.
He will.
Still not.
It'll happen.
At the last minute, Dracula accepts that Dennis is not going to fly and rescues him from going splat. Then he hugs him and tells him that his papa is always there for him. That is a huge mixed message to send to kids. It asserts that it's okay for parental figures to put you in harm's way as long as they rescue you at the last minute.
Sir, I mean the authorities. I can't not report child endangerment.
We're with the camp counselor. That's totally unacceptable. Inappropriate toys. In Hotel Transylvania 2, there's an adorable scene where they are celebrating Dennis's first birthday party. Dennis blows out the candle on his cake with a big baby raspberry. Mavis cheers, and the tiny monster under the candle gets mad and walks off the cake. So far, everything is adorable and fun. But then Frank and his wife give little Dennis a birthday present. It's a little box with a blade inside that reads, "My first guillotine." Dracula is thrilled, but Mavis runs to baby-proof the gift with a rubber stopper. However, no one is concerned about the psychological scars that might be inflicted on this half-human child after receiving a toy like this. And it also left a lot of parents having to field questions from their kids about what a guillotine is. Considering the functional use of a guillotine and the history of this terrible weapon, it's safe to say that this was an adult joke. They took the gag a step further when they said,
"Baby-proofing a guillotine? So you cut your finger off. It's part of the fun."
Of course, it's hard to make jokes about a baby growing up in a monster hotel without some gory humor. Hopefully, kids didn't notice that part. Gremlin Air. In most family films, kids have the luxury of leaving the theater without emotional scarring. But Hotel Transylvania 3 is not your typical family film. There's one scene in particular that might have resulted in a major phobia for kids. It's the scene in which the family is flying to their destination via the airline Gremlin Air. This rickety plane is just barely flying through the air as it is, but on top of that, it is manned by the tiny green monsters from the classic 80s horror film, Gremlins. These little monsters wreak havoc wherever they go, and the air is certainly no exception. They throw luggage out the window, chew on wires, and scald the passengers with hot coffee. This list goes on and on. So for a kid who is watching this and has never been on an airplane, it could lead to them having some wacky expectations. Kids have big imaginations, and they are open to believing in things when they see them, even if those things are in a cartoon. It's possible that some kids actually believe that this is how air travel works. To a young person, that is a terrifying idea. While adults were laughing out loud at that moment, some kids were probably scared out of their minds. Fear of the sea. While we're on the subject of phobias, let's talk about all the movie's references to sea tragedies, natural disasters, and sea creatures. Hotel Transylvania 3 is loaded with them, so any parents who are thinking of taking your kids on a cruise might want to skip this movie. First, the cruise ship that Mavis and her family board looks exactly like the Titanic. We all know what happened to the Titanic. Granted, kids might not recognize that this looks the same as the historic ship with the tragic fate. Then the family goes on a scuba diving adventure and near an active underwater volcano. Kids might watch this film and think that all cruise ships float near active volcanoes. Then, the scariest sea moment of all is when Van Helsing wakes up a scary sea creature with a bad attitude to destroy Dracula along with all his monster friends and family. He looks absolutely terrifying. If Dracula's scary face was too scary for children, this is definitely way over the top. We're guessing it left many young viewers with an irrational fear of the ocean. Dating app. There's a really funny scene in Hotel Transylvania 3 where Dracula is asking Siri to help him find a date. Dracula says,
"I want to meet someone."
"Understood. You want to eat dim sum."
Then he says,
"I want to go on a date. I'm lonely."
Siri says,
"I understand. You want baloney."
This is a pretty spot-on reference to the plight of this generation. We have access to people and information through our screens, but so many of us are lonely. To bring this point home even more, they do a clever reference to dating apps. Dracula is scrolling through an app on his phone called Zinger. He is swiping left over and over again because he isn't liking the options he is presented with. It It's pretty telling when a monster can be so picky of others on a dating app. The first candidate is pretty hilarious though. The shape of her head had us rolling on the floor laughing. Still, this is clearly an adult reference that will likely fly over the heads of the younger crowd, but adults know that the dating world can be way scarier than the monster world. Erika's violent ways. There are a lot of references to danger in all of the Hotel Transylvania films, but the third movie takes violence to a whole new level. In the film, Erika Van Helsing is determined to get revenge on Dracula for her great-grandfather, Professor Abraham Van Helsing. So the film is one long string of attempts on Dracula's life at the hands of Erika. She tries to shoot him with a flare gun. She also attempts to drop boats on his head and tries to knock him off the ship with a big crate attached to a crane. Poor Blobby really took a beating in that scene. And while kids may not get the severity of Erika Van Helsing's actions, adults certainly do. Kids probably thought it was funny when Blobby was shot up into the sky, exploding like a firework. Hopefully they didn't realize how serious that could have been if Blobby were a vulnerable human being, but with any luck, kids didn't take all the attempts on Dracula's life too seriously and enjoyed the movie. Still, some parents couldn't help but be outraged at the threequel's aggressive and violent tendencies.
Especially you, Count Dracula.
Did you notice any moments in the Hotel Transylvania movies that weren't for kids? If so, tell us in the comments. If you liked this video, be sure to give it a big thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to The Things. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you next time.